Thank you for tuning in to Counseling Today. I'm your host, Emmanuel Sims. Today we'll be doing a case file presentation on a client who suffers with acquired hearing loss. Let's dive right in. Michael is a 19-year-old white man with acquired hearing loss. His onsets began at age 2 due to chronic ear infections. He reports that he's the only child and recently moved to Washington, D.C. to attend Gallaudet University, the school for the deaf and hearing impaired, to study informational technology. Michael reports that his scholarship is not enough money to handle his books and other expenses. Only his room and board and tuition is covered. Michael states that he's had previous employment working as a stock person in a warehouse and is interested in finding a job in that field. Now let's look at Michael's prognosis. According to Time Mary, if hearing problems develop later in childhood or adulthood, that is acquired hearing loss, postlingual. That is considered because it's after the development of speech. Most conductive hearing problems result in some type of interference that results in the inability of sound waves to conduct from the pinna into the ear to vibrate tympanic membranes into the inner ear structure. Green's onsets beginning at age 2. He has had numerous assessments related to his conditions. Several considerations are relevant to the assessment and categorization of hearing loss, including the degree of severity, configuration, onset, and progression. To test the severity of Michael's condition, the results collected are quantified to determine the level of his hearing ability. According to Wilbur, results has been increasingly accurate and standardized through the use of commercial audio meters, devices for measuring pure tone, air and bone conduction of sound. Once the underlying causes of audio or vascular disturbance are addressed, treatment and management of the residual may be considered. Treatment and management strategies for hearing loss, deafness, and related vascular disorders are dependent on type, severity, and the etiology of the condition. In this section, key treatment management devices strategies of hearing loss and vascular disorders are reviewed. Let's look at Michael's results of treatment outcomes. Treatment and management of hearing loss are vital. The most common hearing management method involves the use of assistive listening devices are beneficial in social and emotional areas and include hearing aids and cochlear implants. Aurora rehabilitation focuses on the impact of hearing loss on communication, and it seeks to increase the patient's communication skills. Treatments may include kinesthetic, which helps develop listening skills, oral, which employs assistive listening devices, speech reading, along with kinesthetic. Speech reading, comprehension of lip movement and body language. Manual communication, those are nonverbal cues and sometimes sign language. Mr. Green's rehabilitation team will consist of an audiologist, a teacher of the deaf, clinical psychologist, and a vocational rehabilitation counselor. But I'll talk more about those soon. Oral rehabilitation plays a crucial role in treatment and management of deafness and hearing loss. For adults, oral rehabilitation predominantly focuses on the impact of the hearing loss and the communications and the procedures used to improve communications effectiveness. The audiologist will evaluate, diagnose, treat, and manage hearing loss. Speech-language pathologists will evaluate and diagnose speech, language, and cognitive communications. Teacher of the deaf will educate students who are deaf and hard of hearing. The clinical psychologist will be responsible for assessment and treatment of mental illness and abnormal behaviors and psychiatric problems. Many people with hearing loss report negative experiences with the hearing world. Such experiences result in emotional and behavior problems. Research indicates that nearly half the deaf and hard of hearing report experiences of mental health conditions attributed to the difficulties with communications. Hard of hearing individuals often face significant isolation and social alienation due to functional limitation in audition and communications.
When I was a freshman in my high school, I was very depressed because in new high school having no friends. I was a deaf Hispanic girl wearing cochlear implants. That's the device that helped me to hear. When I arrived in my new high school, it felt like a completely different world. I didn't know anyone. Nobody cared. Nobody asked me how I felt or if I was okay or not. All the people usually avoided me because I was deaf or gave me a disgust look. Is she deaf or what? They were usually whispered like that. I didn't like that. I felt very sad. I was living in cold, grey, and isolated world. I was in my poetry class. There was that brown-haired guy sitting in front of me. He gave me a note, shocking me. I never had a note before. I opened it. He was asking me if I'd like to have a friend. He was a complete stranger. I didn't trust anyone, but I was still giving him a benefit of doubt. Eventually, I became his best friend. He talked to me like I was a deaf, and I was happy. He made me feel belong. I usually hang out with him. We're always drawing something new or working on the story. He remains to be my best friend today. But my best friend treated me like every hearing person. I'm truly learning on friendship. I can't really hear, but I'm willing to help my friends. He changed me, and I really thank him for that. I'm really happy to have a friend.
Speech comprehension problems can result in marked inability to participate in reciprocal conversations and social interactions. Alright guys, now we're going to jump into the psychological evaluation of Mr. Green. Prior to Michael's psychological evaluation, a preparation meeting was held to front load him with the information to expect from the evaluation. I described to him the purpose of the psychological testing, including what questions would help him develop his rehabilitation plan. Factors such as the increase in level of self-awareness, identifying his behavior strengths and limitations, the development of vocational goal, plan for the determination of his future, testing and treatment programs. Furthermore, preparation for Mr. Green's psychological evaluation consisted of gathering his social vocational history, medical history, vocational objective, so that we can provide him and his consulting psychologist and increase the probability. A brief synopsis was provided in a variety of areas: physical, educational vocational, psychological, economic, and vocational choice. First, we'll start with the physical. Remember, Michael received his hearing loss at the age of 2 due to chronic ear infections. Psychological. Michael reports that he's homesick a lot and he misses his mother. He reports that he's not feeling any forms of depression or anxiety at this present moment, though he is anxious to start back working. Educational and vocational. He's interested in customer service work while finishing his first semester at Gallaudet. He worked successfully as a warehouse, long term of course, prior to moving to Washington, D.C. The warehouse he previously worked has locations in several states, but not the one that he currently resides. Next on our list, we'll look at his economic situation. Presently has no financial support, and he's willing to apply for public assistance and work study opportunities on campus. He reports that he desires to send money to his mother and his sister any way possible. And lastly, vocational. He's seeking customer service work and willing to work in another warehouse if possible. Commended, Michael. Commended. Michael does not use his deafness as an excuse for failure. He reports when life knocks him down, he gets right back up. He views his disability as reminders to stay humble, and he attends the gym with other students at his universities to stay in good shape and accomplish his dream in attending the Olympics. Mr. Green displays emotional stability and reports excitement in starting his vocational rehabilitation journey. Next, we'll look at Michael's ability to work. As it relates to getting Michael back to work, he would work closely with his vocational rehabilitation counselor, who would assist his skills of readiness for work, along with ensuring the necessary accommodations are made for him. With Mr. Green's warehouse experience, he can utilize those transferable skills as he works with his vocational rehabilitation therapist. Let's look at Michael's profile. He's a younger man with a high school education or above. He qualifies for semi-skilled work. As a result, in his physical exertion requirement, he falls under the category of very heavy work, which involves lifting more than 100 pounds occasionally and frequently lifting or carrying 50 pounds or more. Earlier in the show, we mentioned assistive technology. Now we'll get into the different types of assistive technology. Two types of assistive technology recommended for Mr. Green conditions is the air conduction or bone conduction hearing aids, which are available in a wide variety of different styles and shapes. They use air or bone conduction to transmit sound and are either analog or digital. According to Baldwin, air conduction hearing aids uses a receiver to amplify sounds and direct it into the ear canal, using vibratory sound waves moving through the air. Bone conduction hearing aids are suitable for individuals who have more conductive loss, related to the middle of the ear, but have inner ear functioning. Medications. Mr. Green will not need any additional medications. All current methods of improving adherence in deafness and hard of hearing will remain consistent for further notice. Next, we'll look at functional limitations. According to Baldwin, functional limitations associated with hearing loss or deafness are largely dependent on prelingual versus postlingual. As mentioned before, Mr. Green has conductive hearing loss. Conductive hearing losses do not usually result in functional deficits that are significant as those associated with sensory hearing loss. Michael's functionality is not severely affected by his hearing loss. He can read lips and do sign language. He reports by attending Gallaudet University gave him the upper hand, which allowed him to practice his skills, which he was not able to do when he was back home. Alright, and there you have it. Case file presentation brought to you by Counselor Today. Again, I'm your host Emmanuel Sims, and I look forward to seeing you again. Okay, that concludes our case file presentation on Michael Green, and I look forward to seeing you guys again on Counselors Today. I'm your host Emmanuel Sims, and remember, one kind thought a day keeps the depression away. And remember, a smile a day keeps anxiety away. And remember, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.